He secretly gambled $100 billion of Wall Street's money, and nobody noticed. When his gamble collapsed, it wiped out $30 billion in market value for ordinary retail investors. Six of the world's largest investment banks suddenly found themselves trapped in $10 billion of losses. This was not a global pandemic, a sudden recession, or a sophisticated cyber attack on Wall Street. Banks trusted a convicted felon with $50 billion just to collect fees. A single firm wiped out billions. The man behind this invisible empire was Bill Hwang, a quiet, low-profile investor. He was the star disciple of Julian Robertson, a legend who pioneered the modern hedge fund. But in 2012, Hwang's previous hedge fund pleaded guilty to federal wire fraud. Regulators realized his massive profits were built on illegal insider trading. The government banned him from managing public money, seemingly ending his career, but he quickly found a loophole to build a secret fortune. In 2013, Hwang bypassed the ban by turning his remaining $200 million into a private family office. Family office meant he was no longer managing other people's money, only his own. Under United States law, family offices are completely exempt from registering with the Securities and Exchange Commission. This meant Hwang could trade billions without ever filing public quarterly disclosures. To the world, Hwang was a deeply religious man who hosted 7 a.m. scripture readings for his staff. He named his firm Archegos, a Greek biblical term meaning pioneer or author of salvation. He poured his trading profits into a foundation that held over $500 million for Christian causes. Wall Street saw a humble philanthropist who only wanted to do good. They believed his quiet lifestyle was proof of a safe, conservative investment strategy. His returns were so consistent that banks begged to handle his trades. No one stopped to ask how a banned investor was generating such immense wealth. He trusted the mask of the quiet, devout billionaire, hid in plain sight, using a financial mechanism that bypassed standard regulations. To build his empire in total secrecy, Hwang used a complex derivative called a total return swap. A bank buys the actual shares, while the client pays a fee to receive all the gains or losses. This meant Hwang controlled a large stock portfolio, but his name never appeared on the ownership records. Because the banks technically owned the shares, Hwang's name never appeared on public disclosure forms. He negotiated terms that required him to put down as little as 10% collateral, multiplying his bets tenfold. Imagine buying a mansion with only a tiny down payment, hoping the price goes up before the bank asks for the rest. Hwang used this extreme leverage to quietly buy large positions in just a few companies, like Viacom and Discovery. Through multiple banks, Archegos secretly controlled more than 20% of the shares of Viacom. He was carrying a load so heavy that any sudden stumble would crush him instantly. He also secretly controlled over 70% of the shares in a Chinese education company called GSX. Hwang hid these large bets by spreading his trades across competing banks like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and Credit Suisse. It was like taking out 5 large mortgages from 5 different lenders without telling any of them about the others. None of these global lenders knew that Hwang was running the exact same highly leveraged strategy with their direct rivals. In 2018, Goldman Sachs compliance officers blacklisted Hwang due to his prior fraud conviction. Bank's gatekeepers saw the danger and locked the door to keep him out. But late that year, seeing the millions in fees their rivals were making, Goldman executives overruled their own compliance department. Goldman Sachs welcomed Hwang back, clearing billions of dollars in highly leveraged swap transactions. Greed turned the gatekeepers into enablers, ignoring the warning signs for a share of the profits. In mid-March 2021, Hwang's personal fortune had quietly grown to $36 billion. The total value of the stock positions he controlled through bank leverage peaked at $120 billion. He was standing on top of the tallest financial mountain ever built by a single private trader. But a mountain built on leverage is highly sensitive to the slightest shift in the wind. Banks had no idea they were holding the matches to their own destruction. The clock was ticking, and a single corporate decision was about to shatter the illusion. A single stock offering was about to trigger a global bank run. On Monday, March 22, 2021, Viacom CBS announced a stock offering to fund its streaming service. The announcement backfired, causing Viacom CBS shares to drop 9% the next day. For Hwang, a 9% drop was not just a loss, it was a direct threat to his entire empire. On Wednesday, Viacom CBS shares plummeted another 23%, wiping out billions in collateral value. The foundation of his house of cards was rapidly dissolving into nothing. Drop triggered margin calls, with banks demanding Hwang immediately deposit billions in cash. The lenders realized their collateral was no longer enough to cover the loans they had given him. Hwang did not have the cash. His entire fortune was fully locked up in the very stocks that were crashing. He was caught in his own leverage trap, unable to move without causing a deeper panic. A flood of shares triggered a panic, causing Viacom CBS stock to crash 52% in a single week. Ordinary retail investors who believed in the stable media giant watched their life savings vanish. Discovery shares plummeted 27% in a single day as the liquidation intensified. The market was in freefall, and no one knew where the selling was coming from. Every tick of the clock was erasing billions of dollars of wealth across the globe. The disaster quickly claimed its first victims, forcing the head of Credit Suisse's investment bank and their chief risk officer to resign. Both executives were forced out of the industry within hours of the collapse. In just 2 days, Bill Hwang's personal net worth went from $36 billion to zero. It was the largest individual trading loss in the history of modern finance. Hwang had spent 20 years building his private investment firm, Archegos Capital. The firm's collapse triggered a massive margin call that his banks could not collect. While Hwang was ruined, the banks that enabled him were about to turn on each other. 6 global investment banks held the keys to Hwang's remaining stock portfolio. On the evening of Thursday, March 25th, Archegos executives held an emergency call with representatives from the world's biggest banks. During the call, Archegos pleaded with the banks to agree to a temporary standstill to prevent a market crash. Credit Suisse executives, facing massive exposure, pushed for a slow, coordinated liquidation over several weeks. Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley refused to sign, planning to sell their shares first. At 8 in the morning on Friday, Goldman Sachs broke ranks and dumped $10.5 billion of stocks. Morgan Stanley immediately followed, quietly selling over $8 billion of holdings before the rest of the market could react. While they promised cooperation on the phone, the American banks executed a fire sale, leaving their rivals with the losses. Credit Suisse and Nomura, who hesitated to sell in hopes of a coordinated agreement, were left holding billions of dollars in worthless collateral. On March 29th, Nomura announced a potential $2 billion loss, causing its stock to plunge 16% in Tokyo. Credit Suisse suffered a $5.5 billion loss, wiping out more than a year of investment profits. The Archegos loss devastated Credit Suisse, a bank already struggling with years of scandals. Panicked clients withdrew billions, forcing a collapse and a government-backed takeover by UBS. A 167-year-old Swiss institution was destroyed because it trusted a single secret gambler. Japan's largest bank also reported a $300 million loss linked directly to Archegos. The shockwaves from a single investment office in New York rippled across the global financial system. In total, global banks lost over $10 billion from the collapse of Archegos. Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley quietly sold their shares first, leaving other banks to take the heaviest losses. Hwang secretly borrowed $55 billion because Wall Street banks ignored his past to collect high fees. In April 2022, federal agents arrested Hwang, and a jury convicted him of fraud in July 2024. During the trial, evidence revealed his leverage ratio at some major lending banks had reached 1,000%. Facing up to 20 years in prison for each count, his sentencing was scheduled for late 2024. In July 2023, the Federal Reserve fined UBS $268 million for these failures. Today, over 10,000 family offices globally manage $6 trillion, largely shielded from public scrutiny. $36 billion fortune that vanished in 2 days remains a warning for global finance.